Most producers struggle to mix their beats, and it's usually down to a few simple things they overlook. So instead, they spend hours tweaking sounds only to make it worse than when they started. My beats have generated over 50 million streams, and the truth is, the more I've improved over the years, the less I'm actually doing to each mix. In this video, I'm showing you the exact techniques I use to mix my beats every day, so that you can get yours sounding professional and ready to send out to artists, even if you don't understand a single technical term. We'll cover melodies, sound selection, drums, leveling, and way more. And by the end, you'll have a clear system to start mixing at an industry level. So let's get straight into it. Alright, so to show you my full mixing process, we're going to need to make a full beat from scratch. And just know that when I'm mixing my beats, I want them to sound hard and loud because I upload my beats to YouTube and I email them out to artists. And when they hear those beats for the first time, I want them to feel it. I don't want any weak drums or really quiet beats. We'll start with one of my favorite pads. It's the string support one. This is from my Aurora analog lab bank. Let's think of a simple top line first. Now we can build chords around this. That could work for the bass too. Let's actually try some real strings for this one. We'll just make a few cuts. I'm going to take that and layer it with a pad. But in this one, we'll bring it down an octave. Yeah, this one sounds hard. So layering your melodies is really the first step to mixing because you want to make sure that your sounds aren't clashing from the start. I'm going to add a couple more things then. I'll explain layering properly. Let's add a bass one shot. I'm going to use that as the bass pattern. We've already got from the MIDI anyway. Next we'll add a violin, one of my favorite instruments. Copy that MIDI one more time, and now we'll use a piano. I'm going to process these a bit, so let's link them to mixers with Control and L. And when it comes to melodies, I want you to think about the frequency spectrum. If you're new to producing, just understand that every sound has a frequency range. If you look at it on an EQ, to the left you'll get all the low information, so things like a sub bass, 808, cello, or just anything that sounds quite low. To the right you have high information, so things like strings, hi-hats, or anything that sounds kind of airy. Then in the middle you'll usually have the main instruments, so things like guitars, pianos, vocals. When you're looking at a piano roll, the further down you go, the more low frequencies you'll get. The higher up you go, the more high frequencies you'll get. Now, if you think of the frequency spectrum as a house with multiple floors, you'll have a basement where the sub and the bass lives, the ground floors where most of the furniture lives, so things like pianos, guitars, vocals, and then you have the attic, so that air or shimmer, so things like hi-hats and strings. Now, if you try and fit too much furniture into any of the floors, it's just not going to feel right. It's going to become too overcrowded, and that's why we separate things. So when you're adding instruments and layering stuff, you want to make sure that each thing has its own space and purpose. So in this example, we have the sub bass, mainly covering the sub. You have the pads covering this low mid section. Strings that are playing a bit higher. Now obviously some presets will have some lower information too. Like this string preset has some bass strings in there. Doesn't mean that you have to go cut out every single thing, but just pay attention to where the main focus is. It's fine if some things overlap. Now with this piano, mainly covering the mids and high mids, but I might change that. Now with the violin, covering the highs. So each sound here has its own space in the frequency spectrum, but we can tighten it up a bit. For example, in this pad, I don't really need the low end from it. I already know I'm going to add an 808, which is going to take up the majority of that space. So I'm going to bring this down to get a high pass, which is just letting high frequencies pass. And this is changing the steepness so that it's rolling more off. Think about that works. I usually find that I'm cutting out below 100 Hertz on certain instruments. Now it's not clashing with this bass too much. With the strings, I don't really need that sub information. It's not going to change the way it sounds. But it's going to clean it up. With this piano, I'm going to add halftime. When you add something like halftime, it's going to make it sound lower, so you'll get more low frequencies. I don't really need that right now. So I'm just going to shape it a bit. Maybe give it some high mid presence. I'm also going to add sound shifter to bring that up an octave first. Just makes it sound a bit more sampled. So really in this melody, the pad and the strings, I can see the piano's already panned a bit to the right. So I'm just gonna bring the violin a bit to the left to balance it out. So now that I've given everything its own space, I can make some creative choices. For example, I want to add some reverb to the piano, and this will just make it sound like it's in a certain environment. Maybe we could try bright hole though. And usually when I'm adding things like reverb and delay, I like to bring the low cut up. It just means you're cutting out the low frequencies of the reverb output. Do that because when you start adding things like delay and reverb to lower frequencies, it can get muddy real quick. So it just cleans it up a little bit. Then I'm going to add some delay before the reverb so that the delayed signal also gets the reverb. You got to remember the effect works in a chain. So it's starting with sound shifter, then going to halftime, then EQ, now the delay, and then finally reverb. This is just cutting out the higher frequencies of some of the delay signal. Now, just from experience, I know that the low mids can also cause a lot of problems, especially if you're going to be using an 808. So I usually do this when I have the 808 in there, but I like to quickly check because this region could sound a bit boxy. And this pad's quite low. So I'm just going to save a little bit of space here. We'll come back to it when we've got the bass in. I'm going to take that same reverb, click and hold on Save Preset As, drag it to the violin. Now all the settings will be the same. Okay, now if we check the EQ, you can see we're pretty much covering everything. We haven't even added the drums yet. The only dip is in this really high area here. Usually things like hi-hats will cover that area anyway, but I just want to add one more layer for some texture and a bit more of a creative sound. So I'm going to hold Control, left click and drag over the main instruments, right click on an empty one, select route to this track only. Now this is going to route all the instruments to one track. Now anything I add on here will affect them all together. I'm going to pull up Layerizer, which is my plugin. I just want to find a nice textured layer. Yeah, something like this. Let's just bring that auto pan down a bit though. Shift and E to open Edison, and we'll record this in. Just so I can treat this as the proper separate layer. Now when I need it, we can add those real high frequencies back. Just in a really cool textured way. Let's actually try a different key. Hold Shift and left click, right click, transpose. Bring it up one for now, and that texture layer. That could work too. Now I'm going to take it and pitch it up, Alt double click, and then reverse. Just gives me new ideas. Instantly I'm feeling that way more. And I'm just going to bring these back so that it's the same progression. I'm also going to set this to generic bleeding so you don't get any clicks or pops. Alright, so now we've got a whole new melody. To get some low end back in, I'm just going to add some piano bass notes. Just using the root note for this. Okay, now for the drums. And this is probably why you clicked on the video, because most producers in the beginning struggle to get the beats hitting hard. I used to just drag in any sound and then stack up different effects to try and get them hitting hard. But then I realized that the pro producers are just using good sounds to start with that don't require a lot of mixing. If you think about it, when producers like myself are creating packs, we go through a lot of mixing in the sound design stage. We add things like compressors, transient shapers, EQs, distortion, saturation, just everything to get the sound sounding good. So then if you're using those sounds in your beat, why would you need to go through that whole process again? It's kind of like someone ironing your shirt for you, and then when they give it to you, you iron it again. There's no creases to get rid of, so at that point you're just flattening your clothes. Let me show you an example. So let's say you like this snare. To me, I can tell this is just a weak sounding snare. Even if I boost that up, it just sounds weak compared to using something like this. These are all sounds that I've been designing and are pre-processed. Could even try this. See how it sounds good without me having to do anything. Grab another one like this, and then one of the essentials like this. And we're gonna layer some. And And yo, quick shameless plug, because it's been a while since I dropped a drum kit, and I'm not only dropping one brand new one, I'm dropping 5 in a new bundle. This bundle is just for drums, and there's well over 1,000 new sounds in here, and I'm still finalizing everything. There's a new kit for all types of drill, a kit for jerk and hood trap, a trap kit, an early 2000s kit, and a boom bap kit. So all of the genres I mainly cook up. I went all out with this one and even had sounds recorded live for the boom bap kit, like fills, drum breaks, and one shots. I really wanted this to be everyone's go-to stash for drums that covers all bases. I'll be sharing more of it soon, but if you click the link in the description to join the waitlist, you'll get early access, a discount, plus bonuses. So look out for Drum Sagas soon, the biggest drum bundle of the year. Let's get back into it. Let's grab an 8-weight. I usually like to start with something simple like spins, then use some creative ones in between. With the spins, I like to boost it. About 5% sounding good. And this one already has the out up. You can see it's a shorter one. And then we'll right click and select cut itself so that the notes don't overlap. And the reason it's going to hit hard is because we have a soft clipper on the master. So we're boosting it into the soft clipper. If you didn't have a soft clipper on the master and you were using a hard clipper or limiter, what would happen is you'd have that set to a threshold. And as the audio signal's coming up, when it hits the threshold, it instantly goes flat. That just gives you a harsh sound that doesn't really sound good if it's pushed too hard. But if you're using a soft clipper, you still have that threshold, but when the audio signal comes up, instead of going flat, it sort of rounds it off and curves it. So instead of sounding harsh, it just gives you a nice smooth punch. Another tip for getting your 8-weights hitting hard is just making sure that you're using the right notes. What I mean by that is certain 8-weights only sound good in a certain range. For example, with the spins and the majority of 8-weights, to be honest, I usually find myself wanting to start with somewhere between A sharp and F sharp. But I find that sweet spot between B and D sharp. For example, I think if I pitch this down 1 and have the 8-weight hitting on D sharp, I'm just going to get more low rumble from it. I think it hits harder. Might even speed this up. Let's go 150. Honestly, all of the sounds in this bundle are interchangeable too. I use the trap sounds in hood trap beats, drill sounds in the jerk beats, and early 2000s in boom bap. They all just work together. Let's grab an open hat too. I'm also going to get a more creative 8-weight in there. Some of these are sounding wild. And when you're using multiple 8-weights to keep it clean, I like to set the cut by number to the same number. That way they're never going to overlap with each other. Let's have one of these bounce fills as well from the drill kit. Before I add too much, I think it just needs a fill. So I've renamed all my sounds. Find an empty insert, Control Shift and L. Now for the melody, I've got this resampled one, the violin and the piano bass. In the piano bass, I'm gonna add an EQ, change this to steep 8. I don't want to cut out all the low end. I want to try and keep a bit if it blends with the 8-weight. Maybe somewhere around there. See how with it's just sounding a bit muddy. I just want to find that sweet spot of not cutting out too much. For the instruments, we'll hold Control and left click to highlight them, right click on an empty insert, and then route to this track only. So that's just grouped the instruments together, so now anything I add on this insert will affect them all together. And it just gives me a better idea of where they're sitting, because I usually have my melodies sitting at around -6. And you don't always want to go just by a dB reading, because there's a thing called perceived loudness. And that just means sometimes you'll have sounds that are hitting higher in terms of dB, but it just doesn't sound louder. And on that melody bus, I'm just going to add a compressor. All a compressor does is turn down the volume of the loud parts automatically so that the quieter parts sound loud in comparison. So think about it simply. Imagine you're talking to someone and then all of a sudden they start shouting. A compressor acts as a volume knob when they start shouting to bring it back down to the normal level. Then when they stop shouting, they turn it off. So instead of having low volume parts and high volume parts, it brings the volumes closer and then pushes everything up together. I just want a little bit of reduction. Even that would work. It's also going to stop it peaking too high, and that just saves room for the overall mix. My 8-weight is going to be the loudest thing that's clipping into the soft clipper, and then I'll have my main snare. and then the other snares underneath that. So let's just bring each one in. And when I've got quite a few, I'll just balance them with panning. So I'll have one to the right, maybe at like 25%, one to the left, about the same. Then this beat is more of a jerk hood trap beat, so that's why there's a lot of snares. So with this snare, I'll have that just underneath that main one. These two layers, they can be a little bit underneath. With my open hat, I'm just going to manually pan those left to right, just to make it sound more interesting. It's all about balance. You don't want one side to feel heavier than the other. Otherwise, someone that's listening to it is going to be dragged to one side and it's just a bit off-putting. Any effects can be just below the percussion or these smaller snares. Same with the fill. So now that we're leveled it, let's have a quick listen. Everything's sounding good, but I'm just going to pull up an EQ on the instrument bus, and I'm just hearing a little bit of a build up around the low mids. It's this area here. You don't always have to do this, but sometimes I'll bring this down a bit. And if the 808 was still clashing, you could decide if you needed to filter it like this, or if you wanted to keep some low end of the melody, make it sound a bit more full, you could do something like this. I like it there because then we're keeping that piano bass in. You're probably wondering, what about kicks and hi-hats? Well, let me show you. If I'm using an 808 like this, I'm boosting it this much. It almost sounds like it has a kick because that sharp attack is getting boosted into the soft clipper, so then it gives you that distorted sound. So when it's boosted this much, I might not even need a kick, but for the sake of teaching you, I'll show you what I do. Okay, so I've just added another section, which is more of a trap beat. So if you listen to this now, I've just got halftime on the melody and some new drums.
Okay.
Sounding hard, but we just need to balance it a bit more. So if you look, we've got a new 808, the rat kicks, it's one of the most popular ones, snare, and a couple open hats. With the open hats, because I'm using two, I've got them set to the same cut by number. And then I'm also adding one with 0 velocity when the snare hits. That just keeps the whole thing sounding tight and clean. See how it stops as soon as the snare hits. With the melody, because I'm adding halftime, it's introducing a lot more lower frequencies that would clash with the 808. So I've added a new EQ and I'm cutting out everything below about 125. Maybe even a little bit more for this section, but we can automate that EQ, turn it off in this first section and then on in the second one, just so we're not killing too much low end in this first part. And then for leveling, my snare's hitting about the right place, hi-hats are just below that. With my hi-hats, sometimes I can hear a little bit of low end which isn't needed, and I always clean those up before releasing the pack. But if you see any of that and you don't need it, you can just roll it off. With the kick, I think we can boost that more. So let's see. That would be too much. That sounds pretty good too. The other thing I always check is the phase. The phase is just the shape of the waveform. And because the kick and the 808 share a lot of the same frequency ranges, sometimes you can get what's called phase cancellation, which essentially means it cancels the sound out. So you might lose a bit of low end. Like in this one, for example, if you listen closely. When I turn reverse polarity on, which means it flips this phase, I'm hearing more low end in that kick. To give you an example of that, if you take the exact same kick, copy it, make it unique, and then flip one of them, now they're going to be perfectly out of phase. So when this line goes down, the other one will be going up, and it's going to cancel the sound out. See how you can't hear anything? That's what can happen when they're paired with an 808. You won't lose everything, but you'll lose some information. We can also use sidechain compression. So if I take the kick, I'm going to right click on the 808, select sidechain to this track. And there's a few ways to do it. But if we use a stop plugin like Fruity Limiter, right click on sidechain and then select the kick. We're going to bring the threshold down, the ratio up, bring the release down. Then just play around with the ratio and the threshold. All that's doing is every time the kick hits, it's going to reduce the volume of the 808. And you can see it visually here. The purple bit is what it's reducing. So if you had the release up, it would last a bit longer. So usually we just want to carve a little bit of space for the kick if it's needed. Or sometimes I'll use kickstart because you can do the same effects but just select the frequencies. So now it's only reducing the volume of the 808 below that frequency range. That sounds clean. Got the hi-hats just under the snare. With the open hats, we can bring those just below the hi-hats. There we go. The next step for mixing is character. And this is something you think about after leveling. These are the decisions that you want to make with intention. I know a lot of producers who jump to certain plugins like distortion and saturation just because they've seen someone else do it or they think they need it. It's the same with sidechain compression. A good rule of thumb is every time you're about to add something, ask yourself why you're doing it and if it needs it. If a kick and 808 are already sounding good, it might not need sidechain compression. If your snare and hats are already shining, then you might not need any distortion or saturation. But if you wanted more punch in something like the snare, you could try a transient processor and bring up the attack a little bit. Transient is just the peak at the beginning of the waveform, and if you feel like something isn't hitting enough or sharp enough, you could try bringing up the attack. I do this a lot in the sound design stage. If you want the snare to be shorter and sharper, you could bring down the release. So that would be too much. You can hear this 808 already has a lot of distortion. But if it didn't and you wanted it to stand out a bit more on smaller speakers, you could try this. I'm going to add a plugin called Frequency Splitter. I'm going to select the 808, sidechain it to an empty track. In Frequency Splitter, we'll right click here and select that track and then mute them from here. Now if you look, it's sending the mids and highs to a separate insert. I find that if you add saturation and distortion to things like 808s, sometimes it can just muddy up the low end a lot. But if you add it to the mids and highs, we can keep that nice low end but just get that extra shine. You could try Overdrive or a free plugin like Camel Crusher. Something like that sounds good. Then if you want it to affect less of the lows, just bring this up. But yeah, this sound doesn't need it because that's what I did in the sound design stage. The next step is to think about movement. And this is another creative decision, not something too technical. For example, on this melody bus, I might just add some kickstart. And if you adjust the mix level, it makes it less intense. But if we hear it on full, I'm thinking we could use a quarter. Just gives it more of a sampled effect. Kind of sounds like the melody's been chopped. Also with this effect loop, so it's more interesting to listen to, I'm going to add another free plugin called Pancake. This is going to pan it left to right over one bar and it will keep repeating over time. But because we've got the mix down a bit, you'll still hear it in the middle, but you'll also feel it moving in headphones. It just sounds a bit more interesting. Sometimes I'll do the same thing to drum fills, or I'll group all of the effects together and add it to the bus. You just don't want to go overboard, otherwise it's going to sound too distracting for people to listen to. But I think this snare might sound good with a little bit of reverb, just below 10%. And as a bonus step, let's talk about mastering. I'll be honest, I keep my beats really simple and most of the time I'll just keep a soft clipper on the master. I explained what this is earlier, but it also stops things going over 0 dB because if that happens, you can get distortion that just doesn't sound good. But sometimes I also like to add something like fresh air. This is a free plugin by the way, and I'd highly recommend it. I use this for vocals too. It really just gives it some presence and sparkle, but you don't want to overdo it. Even a few percent is fine sometimes. That sounds good. Then as a final step, I like to use Ozone 12. It's not something I'll always use, but it can just clean up your beats that little bit more. And I usually start with one click just to see where we're at and what it's recommending. So this is what it's recommending. I'm gonna change it to hip hop.
Okay.
I think it's just a little bit too much. You want it to take in the sound after the soft clipper too, so I've just got it underneath that. Maximizer isn't giving it any gain because we're already pushing it to the max, but it can be good to have at the end because if you're boosting anything in the EQs, then you're going to be bringing the level up. Just know that these mastering tools are usually for finished songs, so it's assuming that there's vocals involved as well. That's why it might be boosting certain areas, so I'm going to bring that down. In the imager, I might even spread the highs more. I don't think it needs a stabilizer. I don't mind this, but I'm going to reduce it a bit. So now we've gone from this to this. It's really subtle, but it can help. And finally, if you want to know how loud your beats are hitting, most engineers use LUFS because it's perceived loudness. So you could use a free plugin like Ulean Loudness Meter. Usually streaming platforms bring everything down to -14 so it's consistent across all tracks. But engineers go higher than that. And the industry standard could be around -8. So if you listen to this, we're hitting like -7. So we're pushing this to the max. But we know we've got a loud beat. So I hope this video helped you. If you like the drums I was using in this beat and you want over 1,000 more just like it, make sure you click the link in the description to join the waitlist for Drum Saga. I appreciate you all watching, and I'll see you in the next one.